We moved to Liberia to from Liberia to Ghana because of the Second Civil War in Liberia, and for a while we lived under the Butuburam refugee camp in Ghana, and after a while, my mom we got stable, and my mom got a job, and I got a scholarship to go to a boarding school, and so most of the time I was at a boarding school in the central part of Ghana, and then we immigrated to the United States on the medical resettlement program to Syracuse, New York, and we're sponsored by a church in Tully, New York, and since we arrived in 2006, we've been in Syracuse since then. Because living in Ghana, you have to, just like it is here for some families, living from paycheck to paycheck. In the U.S., it was kind of like that, but instead of paycheck to paycheck, is from your daily meal to daily meal per se. So it was definitely a struggle, but you know there are struggles everywhere, and our version of a struggle. When we're living in Ghana, it was difficult, but once because of the people that we knew, the organizations that we affiliate ourselves with, I'm talking about church, they helped us out, and so it wasn't, but we're still alive today. But it was difficult. The church that we used to go to, and the public school that we used to go to, based on my grades in that public school, and the church raised money to send me and my younger brother to a private school for about a year, but still getting out of that entire camp-like situation for a child at my age was a good thing. Without seeing your mother, without having a mother around to do things for you, people change, but the camp itself was like I said, it was. I can go into detail a little bit. Like people, the daily struggles that people had. They had difficulty finding their daily food. There were no jobs around. What my mother did specifically in our case was she sold charcoal at the market for half of the day, and then she would braid hair until like 3-4 a.m. and then that would just be enough money to get food for the next day, which is what I meant from your daily meals to your daily meals, which was difficult but for a child, but for my siblings and I think that just made us a little bit more resilient, and it made us stronger coming into this culture where hard work pay off. Because in that culture, no matter how hard you work, you're just working for your survival. You're not working to succeed, you know. I think people in the United States and in any other country, everybody have their own type of a problem. My problem is not the same as your problem. What I worry about is not the same as what you worry about. So unless you take people and put them in specific situations, everybody will always have different kind of problems, you know. So I think I think being in the U.S. Being in the U.S., that's what I've noticed. That's what I've noticed. That different places, different people have different problems. When I was in Africa, my problem was finding food to eat. Now my problem 2 years ago was graduating from college. you know, and other people's problems is keeping their boyfriends, while in other places, other people's problem is finding clean water. So everybody have their own problem, and it's a different degree, different degrees based on who you're talking to, but you can't. There's no way I can say my problem in when I lived in Africa was greater than my problems here now, because no matter where you go, suffering is suffering. It's just there's suffering everywhere, and people suffering here is different from people suffering there. And I understand that what we see as suffering in Africa is not the same as what we see as suffering here. For example, taking the Ebola issue, for example, people are suffering there because there's lack of food, because they don't have the medication to treat themselves, or they don't know about because of the lack of knowledge. Over here, people are suffering of the disease because of paranoia, because of mainly lack of knowledge. So there's different forms. So there's indirect suffering, there's direct suffering. There's different type of suffering, but you're still suffering. So I wouldn't say people are not grateful for what they have. It's just depending on who you ask. It's different the way people think of different problems, and what matters to you is not the same as what matters to me, you know. So I wouldn't call people ungrateful. It's just they have their own different problems to think about. The war displaced a lot of people, and it made a lot of people homeless instantly, overnight. So there will be huge delivery of people via UNHCR trucks into the camp, and all of those people are displaced. All of those people are homeless at that instant. So any kind of housing at that point, we were grateful for. But the housing, looking at the housing situation specifically, the housing that we got there, we were grateful for, but it was in terrible condition. Okay, it was unsanitary. There were a lot of people in one place at the same time, so one person get a disease, everyone get it. But people were grateful for that, and so compared to Western standards, it was terrible. But compared to what it could have been, we were grateful for it. So during the Civil War, my sister and I, we got burned during the Civil War, third-degree burns. Doctors said we weren't going to survive. My sister specifically, she was a baby, and third-degree burns is all the way past the muscles, so because of that, a lot of ligaments and veins got stuck together, and they couldn't do any of those surgical procedures in Ghana. So we started asking people if there's a chance of getting the procedure done elsewhere, and we found a medical resettlement program where you apply to the program, and then they've tried to find sponsors in different Western countries to sponsor your case. So they pay for your flight to that country. They pay for the whatever surgical procedure that the child or whoever is undergoing, and then it's like a loan, and you pay them back gradually. And so we applied for that program, and I can't remember exactly when we applied for it, but it took about 3.5 years for us to get approved for it, and we got approved for it, and they started preparing us, and it took about a year. It took about a year to prepare to come to the U.S. orientation after orientation, and and yeah, and then after 4 years, 4.5 years of being going through this process, we were resettled here, and then my sister got her surgery. I didn't need any surgery because I can cover it with clothes, but she needed surgery on her legs, and she got her surgery when we came here, and then said America was great. We've been in Syracuse since we were supposed to be in Tully, but there were a lot more bigger immigrant population in Syracuse here. So we stayed in Syracuse and went to school. I went to Nottingham, and then after 4 years there, I went to Cornell. When I first came to the U, for me personally, I can only speak for my situation. I don't know, it's different for my siblings because they came a little younger. For me specifically, you can still hear my accent, and it's cool now for us young adults, but it's not cool when the first time you immigrate here, and as a child in middle school or high school, even later in high school, there's still bullying. There's a lot of bullying. There's people just don't understand Africa in general. So there's a lot of, they have their assumptions of what Africa is, and as a child hearing that, for example, people will ask me that I used to sleep with lions. Have I ever seen a building structure before? Have I ever ridden in a car before? So all of those things and the bullying going on. I hated America when I first came here as a kid. I hated it. It was terrible. And I got into a couple of fights during my freshman year of high school. But all of that, after a while, I kind of adjusted and just kind of accepted that this is how things are going to be, and I just have to insert myself in the culture, and found a group of friends that, and I associate well with people, and that in combination with a little bit of resiliency that I've learned in my background in Africa, helped me in high school. But yes, I did not only the language barrier. The language, it was kind of a barrier because I only spoke like raw Liberian English, and nobody will understand me. It's English, but you will now understand it. I spoke too fast, and but there was that language barrier that served as an impediment to most of the services. Moving on to college, that helped a lot. Being different is valued in college. Being different in high school is a very negative thing. At the point, it didn't matter. It didn't matter at the point if whether or not I learned anything per se, but the skills that I developed in the camp, being able to adapt, being able to be flexible, being able to keep my expectations in check, and being able to be a people person, because even after Cornell, after college, I still, everything where I am now, it's because of people that I know. It's not because of what I know. So all of those skills I learned in those difficult situations that I was in, but I didn't know that it would be important later on in the future. I didn't know that I couldn't tell my situation, this situation that I'm in now, when I was there. I just learned them and adjusted and adapted to where I was because I had to, not because I wanted to learn and build on those skills. So they help now, but I wouldn't have known that they would now while I was there. It's just something I had to do to adapt. Um, I will if I met with a younger refugee arriving into the U.S., I would tell them to find um, kind of positive role models, um, and, um, and mainly, and that's difficult to do, as coming in as a refugee, and not knowing anybody, and like being a case manager. Most of the refugees that arrive for like the first 3 or 4 months, I'm the only family they have, you know. So it's difficult. But if I had to give any advice to any young incoming refugee, that's what I would tell them: find a positive role model, and because, like I said earlier, this place in the U.S. or wherever you are, it's really about who you know. You can learn all the book you want to, but in the end, if you don't know anybody, you're not going anywhere. Um, so, but I think what will help is really reaching out to uh, young young people, um, like myself, that came here as refugees, and then asking them that question. Um, um, well, not that question specifically, but asking them, um, um, knowing how difficult, in some situations not difficult, how difficult it was for you when you arrived here. What can you do, or what would you do for a young person that is immigrating here? I think that would be a more helpful question for for someone who's been here and kind of accustomed to the place. Um, um, then asking like a young person, yeah, what would you do? You know, so so yeah, you guys are doing a great thing, and not me, but not only me, but reaching out to a lot of young people is also a great idea.